Well, hello, and welcome back to that thing we like to call Curless Mania, where we talk all things pop, rock, and prog. I've been on a prog kick lately, so it's kind of nice to come back to sort of pop rock. Um, but I will reveal that in a second. First things first, I have to welcome back to my channel the one and only Davey Cretin from Cretin Classics. Davey, welcome back.
Thank you for having me back again, Tom. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We always have fun. We always have a good time.
Oh
And
yeah,
and absolutely. And you know, if you haven't checked out Cretan Classics on YouTube, you need to go check it out. In fact,
thanks.
Davey, I think Davey was going to say something about one of the band that we're talking about tonight is the Cars, and Davey is a huge Cars fan, right? Is that correct?
Yes, since the debut came out in 1978.
Yep. Yep. And
And on my channel, I do have an album ranking of the studio albums by the Cars.
so check it out. I mean, if you want the ultimate ranking, you go to Cretan Classics because
Thanks.
he knows his stuff, man. When it comes to, especially when it comes to the cars, he knows it. So as you'll find out in a moment, you'll find out soon enough. So we are here today or tonight, wherever you're watching this. We are here to talk about one of the best debuts of all time. I mean, I don't think I'm speaking out of school by saying that, but one of the best debuts by a band ever, and that is the Cars. Um, I mean, this thing came out of the gate swinging, and it's just, it's funny. Just listening to this record again, just for this episode, I just wanted to I mean, not that I don't know it backwards already. I just figured I'd listen to it one more time, and man, this record just never disappoints me. I never get sick of it. I mean, I've heard a lot of these songs a million times, and that's the sign of an amazing record is when you can go back and listen to it and go, man, I still love this to death. And this is one of those albums that's like that. And it never lets up. I mean, you put the needle on side one and you just do not stop until All Mixed Up fades out. So and it's just you leave satisfied. This is one of those albums that you just, it kind of, sort of reminds me of like, Boston's first record, or what's another amazing debut, Van Halen's first record. It's kind of in that echelon of like first albums that, in fact, I mean, I love the band's discography, but this was a really tough album to beat. Let's just put it that way. Um, so let me, before we get too far, Davey's really going to dig in. Before he does that, I'm just going to give a quick background, quick history. And this band, of course, revolved around two people, Rick Ocasek and Benjamin Orr. And those two met back in the 60s, believe it or not. They were like met when they were, I think they were like 12 or 13 years old or something. They were really young when they met in Ohio, of all places. And I believe it's Cleveland area. And apparently when they first met, Ben sat down and said, "Hey, by the way, I'm a singer too." I don't, because they were doing, I think Ben was booking Rick's band. And he said, "By the way, I sing too, and I play songs." And he goes, "Oh, really? Let's hear you." And he played a couple Beatles songs, and Rick was just apparently, small sources, completely blown away and said, "Wow, you're an amazing singer. Yes, you should be in my band." And so from then on, they always stayed together, and they formed a couple different bands. One was like sort of a CSN type thing called Milkwood, and it was like
Yes,
sort of like a Crosby, Stills and Nash type of thing, I guess.
folk rock,
Folk
exactly.
rock, yeah, in 1972. Yeah. And then they moved to Boston and formed a band called Richard and the Rabbits. Um and that was where they met Greg Hawkes, and Greg Hawkes was part of that band and on keyboards. And then they then morphed into a band called Captain Swing, and that was where Elliot Easton joined. Elliot saw Richard and the Rabbits and was like, "Hey, I like that. I like that band. I love those songs. I wouldn't mind being part of that." And then for Captain Swing, he was part of it. He joined for that iteration of their band. And then apparently Captain Swing made some demo tapes, of some of the songs that would end up on the debut, and they got played on WBCN by a DJ, a fan who was a DJ, and her name was Maxine Sartori. Um, and yeah, she played like Just What I Needed and something else on
Best Friend's Girl, my
Best
best
Friend's
friend's
Girl.
girl.
Thank you. Yes, those two songs I believe she played on the radio. And the funny story about this, because I was doing some research on YouTube, and the funny and some of there's some YouTube videos out there with interviews and background and stuff. And one of the things that made me laugh the hardest was that Elliot Easton said something like, "There's all these like they would look at the radio sheets, right? And it was like, you know, Van Halen, Warner Brothers or whatever, Running with the Devil, Warner Brothers, there's some other band, and it would be like, whatever, Electra or some other, and then it said like the Cars tape." So it was a demo tape. It's kind of like, it kind of reminds me of like when Rush got played by that DJ in Cleveland. I mean, I
Yes.
think Rush was already signed at the time, but still, she started playing Working Man on the radio, and nobody knew who Rush was. And they became, they got a lot of momentum from that. It kind of reminds me of that story. But anyway, so then David Robinson joins from the Modern Lovers. He was in a band called the Modern Lovers. He joins, and he suggests, how about we call ourselves the Cars? And that then they are fully formed. They have the five classic members in the band. They change their name to the Cars, and they get discovered in a club. Not really discovered, but sort of discovered by Roy Thomas Baker in a club. And he says, "I'll produce your first record," and I don't know. That's about where I'm going to stop, because that's kind of where goes into they start they up stakes and they go to make the first record. So I'm going to hand it over to Davey at this point, and he can give you some stats maybe, and some facts about the first record.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Mhm.
They recorded the record in England at Air Studio in London in February of 1978. And like you said, this was after Maxane played the two demos on the radio, and there was a bidding war for this band between Elektra Records and Arista, were the two left standing. And luckily, I would say they signed with Elektra. It's more of a rock label, prestige label. They had the Doors,
Mhm.
Queen in America.
Yes.
So it was a good label for them to sign with, and I'm glad they did, instead of with Arista, who's more known for pop and R&B acts, not really for rock and roll bands. The producer on the album, speaking of Queen, Roy Thomas Baker produced the record. And if you listen to the demos, in 1999, they released the deluxe version, remastered CD of the record on CD1. CD2 had demos and unreleased songs, a live track. And from the demos, they are a very raw rock and roll band. And you hear Elliot Easton screaming guitar, and it's sort of like a garage band. They were a fully formed garage band that really rocked. And you
Yeah.
hear on those demos what a great guitar player Elliot Easton is. Always one of my favorites. Always thought he's very underrated. Plays for the song, and he and Greg Hawkes on keyboards add so much to this band that I love this band.
Mhm.
Sometimes proggy stuff, rock stuff, new wave, minimalist, experimental. They're all over the place, but they rock.
Mhm.
And the Cars are one of the few bands that everyone liked. The rockers, the hard rockers, the new wavers, the punks, even metal people. They love that hard edge guitar from Elliot Easton. So the Cars were a band you throw on at a party and you wouldn't get any complaints back in the day. They crossed all barriers, pop radio, rock radio, and even when it came, college radio, alternative radio, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
So on June of 1978, June 6th to be precise, the record came out on Elektra Records. First three singles, Just What I Needed, My Best Friend's Girl, and Good Times Roll. Of course, back in the day, it came out on vinyl, cassette, and 8-track too. Look out.
Ah, yeah.
You mentioned the band members. All the songs were written by Rick Ocasek, except about every other album, Greg Hawkes co-wrote a song. He co-wrote the great Moving in Stereo, which we'll get to later. And on the demo of that song, it's just he and Ocasek. So the demo is very cool. In America, this went 6 times platinum. It was number 4 for the year end. And in 1980, it was number 48 for the year end in America. So this is a record that was on the charts for a while. And Elliot Easton has joked in interviews, we should have called it the Cars' greatest hits, because almost every song was played on the radio between pop and rock stations.
Absolutely.
Down in Australia, where our friends Bicycle Legs and Peter Kerr are, it reached number 35, 2 times platinum in Australia. Canada, our buddies Tim Derling, Martin Popoff, Mike Ladano, it reached number 50, once again, 2 times platinum. In New Zealand, it went to number 5 on the charts, the highest placement that I found. Went platinum there. The year end, number 5 on the charts too. And in the UK, it went silver, reaching number 29. I did neglect to say, it went to number 18 in America. So it was a slow burn. All the singles did not hit the top 20. But this record got so much airplay and was on the charts for so long that it was a slow burn and became this huge seller over time. And everyone knows it. The last thing before I go into the individual songs, the model on the cover, she's a Russian lady. She's a model, she's a singer, there she is. And if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, Natalia Medvedeva.
Okay.
And she was a singer in Russia. She led a bit of a hard life. I think she was against the government, the communist regime, and she took a lot of flack for that. And she died at 44, unfortunately, from a heart attack, although some sources say it was a heroin overdose.
Oh, okay. All
So
right.
unfortunately about that, she passed away young. 44 is far too young to pass.
Absolutely.
But she adorned the cover, and everyone knows that image. It's on T-shirts, posters. So many people have the first album. They know her. And Elliot Easton said that over time he got sick of that grinning face, but it was an image, and the Cars got known for that. And the subsequent album covers are also like that. We'll discuss that in the future. Moving on to the album itself, the first song was the 3rd single. And I remember as a young teen, when I bought this album in 1978, I thought it was odd that the first 3 songs are all 3 minutes and 44 seconds. I'd never seen that before, and I don't think I've seen it since.
Wow.
And they're the 3 singles, perfect length for a single. Good Times Roll reached number 41 on the Billboard charts in America, number 74 in Canada. Came out as a single on February 20th, 1979. The song is basically Ric Ocasek's sarcastic look at the rock and roll lifestyle and the idea of good times and how it really doesn't fit with most people's idea of good times. The B-side of the single in America was All Mixed Up, and it starts off with that cool sound, which for years I thought were keyboards, and it's David Robinson on a Sin drum. In 78, a synthesized drum. I didn't think they came out that early. Who knew? So it starts out with that Sin drum and a cool guitar riff by Ric Ocasek. Then he comes in with the vocals, and Hawks comes in on the synths. And it's this great pop rock song, very catchy. It's an earworm. That's the thing about the Cars. Catchy songs, choruses, little keyboard, even bass, drum, and guitar riffs that you remember. They're earworms.
Everything's a hook.
Demo for the, sorry?
I said everything's a hook. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the best way to put it. Thank you. They could not find a demo for this for the 99 Deluxe reissue, so they put a live version on there. And you still hear that Sin drum at the beginning of the song, even in the live arena. And it's such a cool sound. It catches your ears. What is that? That's different. I've never heard that before. So that's a hook in itself.
Yep.
This song was also used in a couple of films. Wonderland from 2003. Just Like Heaven from 2005, and Everybody Wants Some with 2 exclamation marks, just like the Van Halen song from 2016. So that's Good Times Roll is the third single. The second track is My Best Friend's Girl. The second single from the album reached number 35 in America, 3 in the UK, so it's the highest charting song there, 67 in Australia, 55 in Canada, 28 in the Netherlands on the Dutch Top 40, and 40 in the Netherlands on the single Top 100 chart. Like you said, this is the song that Maxine Sartori, the DJ on BCN in Boston, played, and it got them noticed. And BCN was known, and I've always been in New Yorker, so I didn't really know this about BCN, but they broke a lot of bands nationally, like the Police, the Cars, a bunch of other bands. They were known to break bands. They were a huge station in a big market in Boston, of course. Dr. Khan, Harvard Yard. So she got them known, ever grateful to her for. Rick Ocasek handed her the demo. I was always figuring maybe it was Ben Orr because he was a real good looking guy. And maybe Rick used him to pass demos to
Right.
females at record companies and DJs. But no, it was Rick himself.
Wow.
Tall, slender Rick with the sunglasses, that great look. This band, they were a skinny tie band, but they had this cool, detached rock and roll look.
Yes.
So I did want to mention that too. When Maxine Sartori played this song and the following song, the phones lit up at the station. Who is that? What's that band? That's great. And these were only the demos of the songs. And it got them recognized. And Rick Ocasek, he didn't write this song, My Best Friend's Girl, about from a personal experience. He just figured it was a universal experience that a lot of guys went through. And he wrote it the lyrics and he realized, I didn't say the title in the song. So he had to add, she's my best friend's girl, she's my best friend's girl, but she used to be mine. It was almost an afterthought, the chorus.
Yeah.
And it's so catchy and so hooky. There's that twist that he has on his songs. He uses strange words and phrases, but it's always hooky and it's always something that you remember. Let's see, where was I? Lost my place, sorry. The tune also has some interesting hand claps in it, which perhaps was influenced by another Boston band that we know that you mentioned earlier. On their debut album, they had hand claps too, but I couldn't find any verification for that. It's just the way my mind thinks. Oddly enough, this was the first song that was commercially available as a picture disc in the UK. So they came late to the scene. We already had those in America. So I found that surprising. The B-side was Moving in Stereo. And of course, My Best Friend's Girl was on the soundtrack to Over the Edge in 1979. And some critics have commented that Stacy's Mom by Fountains of Wayne from 2003 is very reminiscent of My Best Friend's Girl and the next song I'm going to mention. So let's move on to that. Track number 3, Just What I Needed. This was the first single from the album. Came out a week before the record, May 29th, 1978. The B-side, I'm in Touch with Your World, which is the following song, reached number 27 in the US. It was the highest charting song from the album. 17 in the UK, 96 in Australia, 38 in Canada, 27 in Ireland, 38 in New Zealand. This is the song that Ben Orr sings, the first song he sings on the record. And Ocasek has like a slightly detached, icy, clinical sound, like he's looking at the song from the outside. And Ben Orr, he's got a smoother, silkier voice, sort of inhabits the song more. He has the purer voice, and Rick had him sing a lot of the ballads. But his vocals on the song are great. It's so darn catchy. Once again, Elliot Easton says this is the band's signature song. And that's probably why I have the 2-CD anthology, which I think is out of print, the Cars anthology, Just What I Needed. It's named after their biggest hit. This is a great 2-CD collection with a lot of unreleased songs. So if you could find it in a record store, on the internet, I highly recommend this collection. Excellent collection. More on that after.
Okay.
This song, Rivers Cuomo from Weezer, he was shopping in a supermarket and he heard the song over the PA and he said, I love the way this sounds. My best friend's girl. We should get the guy from the band, Rick Ocasek, to produce our debut album. So he spoke to Geffen Records and they made it happen. So Rick produced Weezer's debut album. And if you notice, it's catchy pop rock songs. That's from Rick Ocasek, the mind of a genius. So Rivers Cuomo is very smart.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. It appears, this song, Just What I Needed, appears on the soundtrack to Boys Don't Cry and 200 Cigarettes. In 2011, it was covered by The Strokes with Jarvis Cocker from Pulp, The Killers in 2018, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers in 2019. Also, Circuit City used it for an ad campaign they had in 2004. The opening guitar riff is inspired by Yummy 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 by the Ohio Express, like a 60s pop rock band that had a bunch of hits that were like nuggets, garage rock songs.
Yeah.
And the lyric where actually I almost said Rick, where Ben sings, Wasting All My Time, is a tribute to one of Rick's favorite bands, the Velvet Underground, and their song Sister Ray.
Mm-hmm.
And I always loved that part. And who knew that it was a tribute to the Velvet Underground?
Huh.
So this would probably be one of the Cars' biggest hits and their most well-known song. Moving on, track 4, 3.5 minutes long, I'm in Touch with Your World, the B-side to Just What I Needed. It's probably the least best song on the album if you rank the songs on this particular album, but I think it's not without its charms. It has some really cool keyboard sound effects from Greg Hawkes that almost harken back to video games when we were kids.
Yeah.
Like the old Atari, ColecoVision, you hear these weird type sound effects, and that's all Greg Hawkes.
Yeah.
And he misunderstood a lyric that Rick was singing. He was saying the real lyric, everything you say is fiction. If you listen to the demo, you could hear Rick singing and Rick and Ben simultaneously in harmony singing, everything you say is fiction. But Greg Hawkes, the keyboardist, thought he was saying everything is science fiction. So that's why he has this weird sound effect at the end of that line. And Rick said to him, why do you make that weird sound on the keyboard? He said, it's because you're saying everything is science fiction. And he said, no, I'm not. I'm saying everything you say is fiction. And Rick, oh, I misheard the lyric. And Rick thought about it. He said, you know what? I like that better. I'm going to change it to fit your sound effect. So he changed the lyric just because of what Greg, the keyboard player, misheard.
Oh, that's a great story.
Cool, interesting fact.
That's a great story. I love that.
Exactly. So he punctuates the song with these weird sound effects, which makes this song charming, in my opinion. Some critics think that this song and the next one are the low points on the album, but, screw them.
Yeah.
It's a great album, start to finish, and every song can't be a 10. So maybe this is a 9 or a 9.5. Live with it. The last song on side 1, it may be the deepest track here because I remember hearing every song on New York rock radio, and you probably do also, Tom. Mm-hmm. Every song except for I'm in Touch with Your World and Don't Just Stop. I don't think I ever recall hearing those songs on PLJ or any W at the time, even WLIR. I don't think tracks. Mm-hmm. But if you did hear those songs on the radio, let us know in the comments below.
Yeah.
So this, I think, is the deepest track. It's the B-side of My Best Friend's Girl in the US and Japan. However, in Europe, the B-side of My Best Friend's Girl was moving in stereo instead. And this is also one of 6 songs that feature on the 2 CD set. So you get 6 out of 9 cuts from the debut album on here. Oddly enough, Bye Bye Love is not on here. They included Don't Just Stop. But my thought was always they left that off so people still buy the debut album. Mm-hmm. If you put all the songs, all the big radio hits from it, who's going to buy the debut? They're just going to buy the collection instead.
Right.
So I think that's the record company. Those guys are smart.
Someone's thinking.
Want the money.
Yep. Yep.
So This is probably the least popular song with I'm in Touch with Your World, but it's a good deep track and it's a fast rocker. It's almost a pop rocker, but Elliot Easton with that guitar solo elevates it to just a fast rock song. And it's a great catchy rock number. The shortest song here, 3 minutes and 1 second. So that is side one of the debut album by the Cars.
Absolutely. And I have to say, it's funny that "Don't You Stop" is one of the songs that's not, one of the hits, and I think that's another killer track. I mean, that was one of the ones that I was jamming to when I was listening to, I mean, that whole, like, when it just that when it kicks in, it's down 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 down, and it just kicks right in. It's just like, I love that. It's so
Yeah,
great.
great opening. And
Yeah,
the
it just
is what makes it. You're
yes,
right.
yes, it's so killer, and I just and then the whole, just the "Don't you stop, don't you stop, don't you," it just like we were saying earlier, the Cars have such a great way of, they know what they're doing when they're writing. They know, like you mentioned it, that the bass is doing something that's hooky. The keyboards are doing accents here and there. Elliot Easton's coming in with his lyrical solos that basically you can hum in your head. I mean,
Yep.
he would come in very purposeful and say, I've got, whatever, 30 seconds. I'm going to make this really memorable. And he always did. Um, and he was from, he was from the Berkeley School of Music, I believe. So he was well versed. He was a great musician. And, and anyway, so, and you had mentioned Fountains of Wayne. Definitely, they were very heavily influenced by the Cars. There's no, I mean, when I remember hearing Fountains of Wayne and being like, "Wow, that sounds like the Cars," especially Stacy's mom. I mean, there's no question that that's a tribute to the Cars. There's no way it's not.
Hmm.
Um, but I also wanted to mention Good Times Roll at the beginning, when Good Times Roll has those real gang vocals, those real, like, almost Queen like vocals,
Yep.
and which I love. I love those. And it's funny because I guess Rick didn't. Rick said that later on he wanted, he said to Roy, let's not do those gang, like on Candio, you notice they're not as prevalent.
Right.
And they're almost missing in action. He said, I don't want to do those gang harmony vocals anymore. But I love when they do that. I think they sound fantastic. You know, um, Whatever they're doing. I mean, I don't know who was all singing those, but I mean, Ben Orr is such an amazing singer. He could do anything. He could sing the phone book, in my opinion. And so anyway, so side one is just, as you said, it's fantastic. I mean, it's maybe I'm in Touch with Your World is the only part where you kind of go, oh, maybe this isn't like killer, but it's still like it's a part of who they are. They have a little bit of art rock in them. And this song is,
Yes.
and this song has a little bit of the art rock, like you mentioned, the Velvet Underground. They had these interesting, very interesting influences, and art rock was kind of in there, and it becomes more prevalent on records like the next one and Panorama, especially, which I love. I love their art rock streak. It's okay with me. I'm fine with that. But
And you could hear also touches of Roxy music.
yes, yes, exactly. Perfect. Yeah, I was trying to think of the other band. That's what I was trying to think of. And I'm sure they liked Roxy music. There's no question. And I'm in Touch with the World. It has that vibe to it. And I just love that it's very experimental and different. And it's okay because everything else is just so driving. Like, this is more of guitar rock driving more than their, maybe possibly than some of their later records. So anyway, side one, unbelievable. Let's go to side two. Let's do it.
Okay. Side two starts off with a song that, if I remember correctly, this is the song that I heard on the radio after the three singles, which I loved, first three tracks. I heard You're All I've Got Tonight on PLJ, New York FM rock radio station at the time. I'm still upset that they left us 40 years ago in 1983, 1984. And
Amazing
also
station.
NEW. Sorry?
I said amazing. What an amazing station that was. PLJ and NEW were like staples
Yep.
for me. Yeah.
I heard You're All I've Got Tonight, the first song on side two. And I always thought it was a longer song. It seems like it's 5 or 6 minutes long, but it's only 4 minutes and 13 seconds. It's so much shorter than I thought. But this song rocks. And
Oh,
David Robinson's drumming on here and the effect that they use, and of course, Elliot Easton's guitar work. Bow now, bow now, now. It's just riff rock, and with the way
yeah.
the drums come in and the
Drums are
guitar,
all
and
phased. Yeah.
Ocasek comes in, and Easton does that slide. I think it's this way.
The
Is it
pick
this
slide.
way?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, it's okay. It's like that. That's what I figured. And
Yeah.
the song just kicks into overdrive, and I heard that on the radio, and that's what made me go out and buy this record on vinyl in 1978, because I heard 4 songs from the album, and I said, I have to go out and buy this. And I remember buying the album, and unlike other albums, my Styx albums had the lyrics from top to bottom. A lot of the Cars albums, I think the first 4 or 5, if not, yeah, until Heartbeat City, had the lyrics going across.
Oh, right.
It
Right.
was so weird reading lyrics that way, because back in the day, before I worked in the record stores, I'd sit in my room with the headphones on, the big old cans, the headphones, and read along with the lyrics, look at the artwork, all the credits to the album, which I had to stop doing once I started working in the record stores. But that song is the one that grabbed me, because it was such like a balls out, pardon my French, rock song.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love You're All I've Got Tonight. It was the B-side to All Mixed Up, which was an A-side in the Netherlands, of all places. It's a
Mm-hmm.
great hard rocking tune, and it's a fusion. I realized just listening to it over and over the past few days, just playing the demos of the album, the regular album, a bunch of times again to get ready for this show. It's a fusion of new wave, where you hear Rick's vocals are new wave and Greg Hawk's keyboards, and then, like I said, the drums and the guitar are the hard rock. So it's a fusion of both those sides. And like I said, the Cars are the only band that unites all fans of rock and roll, except maybe death metal.
Mm-hmm.
But death metal wasn't even around back in 1978. So they're a very rare band where everyone liked them. And this is the tune that won me over.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times on the radio, especially in New York back in the day, they played a twofer, because You're All I've Got Tonight goes right into the next song. There's barely a break. So a lot of times you'd hear You're All I've Got Tonight into Bye Bye Love. Ben Orr is back on lead vocals on this song, and it's been a perennial rock radio staple, despite never being released as a single anywhere. You still hear Bye Bye Love on the radio today. I always thought it was inspired by the old song Bye Bye Love. And now, of course, the band name flew out of my head. The Everly Brothers.
Everly Brothers. Right. Right.
Bye Bye Love. I always thought this was inspired or a tribute to the Everly Brothers, but couldn't find any information about that anywhere. And let's see, this song was used as a demo back in a band you mentioned, Cap'n Swing, CAP''N, not Captain, but Cap'n.
Mm-hmm.
Cap'n Swing, band that featured Ocasek, Orr, and Easton, like you said, they had demoed this. But once Greg Hawkes got his hands on this song, the keyboard line completely changed. So the song was reinvented, probably turned it into the amazing song that we all know and love. Yeah. Moving on to track 8, Moving in Stereo. Any American male of a certain age knows this song from the 1982 film Fast Times at Ridgemont High. That great scene, I won't go into details about it, with Judge Reinhold and Phoebe Cates, and the song playing in the background, Moving in Stereo. And this harkens back to their experimental side. And yes, it's from the mind of Rick Ocasek, who eventually produced such unusual bands as Suicide, Bad Brains, the aforementioned Weezer. He produced a lot of different styles of rock. And Ocasek was into the very minimalistic, experimental avant-garde stuff. And that's definitely where Moving in Stereo comes from. But it's so darn catchy. And if you listen to the demo on the 1999 Deluxe, it's just Ocasek on lead vocals and guitar, the rhythm guitar, bam, 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 and Hawkes on the keyboards, that weird, eerie, like sort of like a shortwave radio. Mm-hmm. Like you're tuning in something from outer space.
Right.
in NASA.
Yes.
That's what it sounds like to me. It's just
Fantastic. Yeah.
eerie and it's excellent. This song is so catchy. This was the B-side to My Best Friend's Girl. And although Ocasek sang the lead vocals on the demo, Ben Orr is back on lead vocals here.
Yeah.
Longest track on the debut, 4 minutes and 46 seconds. And it sounds like it's even longer, but it's not. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You think some of these songs are longer than they are. They're so concise and catchy. And in this case, weird, but it works. And
Yeah.
this experimental song just fits in so well on side two.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's
Life's,
see.
life's the same except for my shoes.
And those weird lyrics.
I
What
love that lyric. I love,
does
I
that
love that.
mean? But it works in the song.
Yeah.
And just that scene in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, it gives me memory burn. That I
Yeah.
hear the
Oh, yeah.
song and I just think of
Yes.
Judge Reinhold, the swimming
Abs-
pool,
Of
Phoebe Cates,
course.
and leave it there. This
Absolutely.
song was played at Nirvana's last concert. They
Oh,
opened their show in, was it March 94, their last show. I think it was in Rome or Italy, Greece, somewhere in
yeah.
Europe. And they opened up their show with My Best Friend's Girl. And then Chris Novoselic and not even Dave Grohl, who used to sing backing vocals live with Nirvana, and Cobain and Novoselic started doing an a cappella version of Moving in Stereo before
Oh,
they went into that crazy loud song, Radio Friendly Unit Shifter from their In Utero record, their third album. So
okay.
I thought that was cool that
Nice.
Nirvana actually played this,
Yeah. Yeah.
a snippet of it.
Right.
It's been covered by the stoner rock band Fu Manchu and another band called Byzantine. And that's about it on this song. But once again, Moving in Stereo goes right into the last song on the album, track 9, All Mixed Up. For years, You're All I've Got Tonight was my favorite song from the record. But All Mixed Up for a long time now has been my favorite song. It has Ben Orr on vocals. It's just beautifully sung. And the way it starts off, once the synth fades out, and then you hear on the hi-hat or on the cymbal, just the ride cymbal, I think it is. You're a drummer. It's the ride cymbal?
Yeah, it's like the bell of the ride cymbal. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the top part of it.
Yes.
That I almost said Elliot Easton, that David Robinson is playing. And then you hear some rhythm guitar that's either Rick Ocasek or Elliot Easton, and the song slowly builds, and Ben Orr's vocal comes in very low. She shadows me in the mirror. She never leaves on the light. And then it gets slightly louder, and then it's all mixed up, and the whole band comes in.
Yeah.
Love that part.
It
That
sort of
is
slides
just,
in. It sort of slides in and then it kicks it. Yeah, it's
it's like
great.
a musical erection when that hits. And I just
Yeah.
love the melody and the song. And I love Ben Orr's voice on the song, one of my favorite vocals by him. This was the B-side to Good Times Roll. And like I said, it was an A-side only in the Netherlands,
Yeah.
oddly enough.
Oh,
But this is such a commercial, accessible song. I always thought it should have been a single, but it wasn't. They just released the 3 songs, the first 3 tracks, as singles here in America. And if you listen to the demo on the 99 Deluxe, Ocasek sings the lead, but it's absolutely Ben Orr here. So Rick knew what he was doing. He was a great producer. He had a great musical mind. I think Ben's voice will work better on this song.
yeah.
And he was 100% right. Certain songs, Ben's vocals just take the song up a notch, besides all the great instrumentation behind it. This is the only song in the Cars catalog where Greg Hawkes, the keyboard player, does a sax solo at the end of the song.
Yep.
On the demo, you get a great, any fans of Elliot Easton, you have to hear the demo, because instead of the sax solo by Greg Hawkes, Elliot Easton has some nice, rough, loud, obnoxious guitar work at the end of the song.
Okay.
So it changes the dynamic of the song. It's a very interesting listen. So go check it out. It's on Spotify. I'm sure it's on YouTube too. And on this song, I have a picture of it. Let me find it here. On bass, this is called a Mutron Octavider. And it's a little pedal. And Ben Orr used it for his bass playing on this song. So I'm not that much of a music expert where I could tell that the bass sounds different, but it's a little fuzz box. This purple, the black knob right here with the purple background, That's to add fuzz to your bass. So any true musicians could probably hear that the bass sound is a little different on this song, on All Mixed Up, because of the Mutron Octavider. Interesting piece of equipment. All the guys in the cars were gearheads, and they always had to have the latest stuff. And Ben Orr said, I want this. And probably with the record advance they got to make the first album, to record the first album, they probably all went to the music store in Boston, maybe even Manny's in Manhattan, who knows? And they got all updated new equipment because these guys were always on the cutting edge, which is something I always thought Rush took from them in the 80s, because Geddy had to have the latest keyboards, the latest sounds. So
Right.
the Cars really started it where they were on the cutting edge of technology, as we'll discuss also in further episodes. So that is side 2 of the debut album by the Cars.
Great, man. You're doing a great job with this, and
Thanks.
man, I love the detail you're getting into, and I don't have as much that much to add besides side 2 is just as good as side 1. I mean, side 1 is killer, and then you get side 2, and it's just continuing the greatness. And like you said, there's a couple things I wanted to mention before I forget. And those, you had mentioned the just Elliot Easton's guitar work on "You're All I've Got Tonight," and I love when he's doing the "I need you where tonight." I said, "I need you where." I just that's such a cool little. He does these little riffs, these little things that stick in your head. They're like stuck. You can't un.
Yep.
And I was
It's
doing
like a little trill. He goes
yes,
down
he's
on
a
the
little
note.
trill, like, "Where," and it's just like, oh my god, that is so perfect for that spot. It's just so great. Um, and "Bye Bye Love" is just one of my favorite Ben Orr vocals. I just think he just kills it. Oh my god, substitution, mass confusion, clouds inside your head, and just, I just great lyrics, great the execution on this record, it just blows my mind because it's and what's funny is that if you see live clips of the Cars, they don't move around a lot, but man, do they kill it. I mean, you see these live clips, you're like, I think Roy Thomas Baker just hit record. I mean, because they're such a tight band. I mean, they could play live in the studio and just hit record and add some effects to the drums and some reverb and and mix it and be done. I mean, that's the kind of band they are. It's because when you see live clips, they're so tight and they sound great. Um,
Yeah, the Midnight Special just put out some live clips a few months ago from, I think it was the Candy O record, the second album. There's some
mhm,
cool clips. You can go to the Midnight Special's YouTube channel. I think they released it earlier this year in the springtime. And there's
yeah,
some great songs, great performances by the Cars from back then. I did see the Cars live, but I'll talk about that in a future episode when we get to that album.
perfect.
And
Okay.
I do want to add, speaking of the lyrics you were saying for Bye Bye Love, the way that Ben Orr sings, "Well, I'm forking all my energies until you're visited," the way he sings forking a couple of times, when I first heard that, I was like, did he just drop a bomb
Drop
there?
an F bomb. Yeah.
But I looked at the lyrics, it's forking, Forking. And I think Rick did that on purpose. And the
Yeah.
way he hits that word, forking, it
Yeah.
almost sounds like something else that I don't.
Yes, who knows if maybe that was, purposeful, who knows,
I
uh,
think it was.
but moving in stereo, you mentioned, I mean, I can't is there a song, I mean, that is more featured in a movie? I mean, that is one of those songs that just is so featured in that movie, and it's so perfect, it's so perfectly placed, and everything's in slow-mo, and it's just like you said, every male of a certain age is like moving in stereo is Phoebe Cates in slow motion. So
Yeah.
there's just no question about it. And it's so perfect for that scene. I mean, that's the thing, it's so perfect. And and then All Mixed Up is like I always say All Mixed Up is like the sleeper of this album because you forget how good it is because it's the last tune. And I realized this not like a little while ago, where when I was listening to this record like 2 years ago, and I was like, "Oh my god, I forgot how great All Mixed Up is. Oh my god!" It's just like that is such a killer way to end the record. And the whole "Leave It to Me, Everything Will Be All Right," and they're doing those gang vocals again, and the whole "be all right, leave it to me," and it's just like, oh, this is just wow, this song is so killer.
Yes,
Uh,
that call and response that they do. That
yeah,
Ben's doing the lead and then the other guys are doing the backing vocals. It's basically Rick and it's Greg and it's Elliot doing the backing vocals. A little bit of David Robinson.
so killer, so killer. What an amazing way to end the record. Side two, just as good as side one. Unbelievable. Um, so that's the record. Oh, I also wanted to mention before, again, these are just things before I forget. I could have things come into my head. And apparently this was supposed to be the cover originally. I think David Robinson worked, is that right? That this
Yes.
what he worked up as the cover. And Elektra was like, "Yeah, that's cool, but I don't think it could be the front cover." Yeah.
They turned
Uh,
it down. Yes.
yeah, he they thought it was too eclectic and too weird and it didn't catch the eye enough or something. I don't who knows. But
I think they made the right choice.
yeah, I think the cover works really well.
It's
Uh
iconic now, 45 years later,
yeah,
46 years later.
yeah, absolutely. So but anyway, but what an amazing record. Now, why don't we talk a little bit we'll touch on because you prepared for the with the deluxe edition there are about four, I believe, four extra tracks. Five.
Five.
Five. So let's dig into those a little
Yeah,
bit.
I'll mention them briefly. The first one is called, and these were all written by Rick Ocasek. The first one features Rick on vocals, just about 4 minutes, a hair under. They Won't See You is the name of the song. And it's a catchy, I wrote down call and response vocals, just like we were talking about the end of All Mixed Up. Nice guitar solo here by Elliot Easton. And it's less produced, it's very raw. Just you could almost hear him sliding on the notes up and down the fretboard. And it's just real great guitar work. Some cool keys by Greg Hawkes here. And there's some nice drums by David Robinson towards the end of the song. You could really hear his power and his proficiency as a drummer on the demos on the deluxe version. It's
Mhm.
sort of a little muted the way everything else is a bit louder than the drums on the record. But he's a really good drummer. They wouldn't have hired him if he was a crappy drummer because the drummer makes the band usually. If
Mhm.
you have a bad drummer, you're not a good band. And he was with Jonathan Richman and the Modern Lovers, like you said. So he was a known quantity in the Boston area.
Mhm.
So that's the first song. The second song is a 6 minute song, believe it or not. It's called Take What You Want. Ocasek sings this one too. And there's some real nice raw riffery I wrote from Elliot Easton on this song. And there's a really long guitar solo, very raw and guttural. And there's a nice rhythmic change up for the underpinning underneath when Elliot Easton is soloing that Robinson and Orr do. They change it up and you just hear that. It's just another catchy part of the song. And for fans of Elliot Easton's guitar playing, I definitely recommend you check out the 6 minute Take What You Want. His solo must be 2 or 3 minutes, at least a
Wow.
third, if not half the song. So definitely check out his guitar work there. The next song is a Ben Orr vocal called Wake Me Up, just under 4 minutes. This is the closest thing to almost a true ballad. There are no real ballads on the first album, but the beginning of this, before it kicks in at the 1 minute mark, is a very ballad like song. It's soft, then it kicks in. It's nice hearing the band in raw form on these demos. I put Robinson and Orr shine here on this song, his vocals and just Robinson's drum work.
Mhm.
Track number 13, if we're counting that way, You Can't Push Me, written by Ocasek, of course, with another Ben Orr vocal. Nice guitar work by Easton with a rocking edge and some cool Ben Orr vocals, and a sizzling electric guitar solo by Elliot Easton I wrote for You Can't Push Me, 3.5 minutes long. The last song, which I don't think they say in the lyrics, it's called Hotel Queenie, and this is a Rick vocal. I don't think he sings that. This is a hair over 3 minutes, much like Don't You Stop. It's a gem of a rocker with Easton and Robinson high in the mix. So the drums on these demos are much louder in the mix. They sound really good. Hawk's keyboard solo comes in, and it's this surprisingly prog type solo. And it just took me by surprise, like, oh, wow, he could really wail on the keyboards, but he's more minimalistic. Maybe that's the way Rick wants it because it's Rick's band. but I like the keyboard work here. Another good guitar solo from Easton. And then towards the end of the track, Hawk's proggy keyboards come back. And then Elliot Easton does another solo and the song ends. But these are very interesting songs, and I recommend any fans who don't know these demos to check them out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and I should say none of them are on here.
Right,
It's not
right.
on the 2 CD collection anthology. They're only on the 1999 deluxe version.
Got it. And interesting that none of them made Candio. I mean, that's maybe another conversation we can have later, but interesting that they, and so would in your opinion, do any of those get close to maybe possibly could have made the record kind of thing?
Yeah, I think some of them are very good.
Yeah.
Maybe if you cut down the long one, the 6 minute one, take what you want. It's a good rockin' song. Maybe tighten it up a little, because for the Cars
Yeah.
to have a 6 minute song back then, it was unheard of. The
Crazy.
very few songs are. There's nothing over the 5 minute mark on the debut, although you think, or at least I think, some of them might be. They're all under 5 minutes.
That is really interesting that you say that because I thought the same thing. I was thinking that some of those songs were like 5 minutes long or 4, 5.5 or something, and they're not. They're
And the
not.
record is only, I neglected to say, I don't think I mentioned this before, the record's only 35 minutes long, a little over 35 minutes.
It's
Because back in the day, before the CD age,
yeah.
brevity,
That's
short
what it was.
albums.
10 songs, 35 minutes, man. That's what everyone was doing. That's
Yeah, and this is 9 songs at 35 minutes.
oh, right, 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 exactly. So I mean, it's just, and that's what I love about these records. I mean, and that's a whole nother conversation. I was thinking about having the one idea I had for an episode was, when people started abusing the CD and it became like the B-sides are making the record, essentially, right? Like they're putting the B-sides on the album. It's like this album would be so much better if they cut 3 songs or 4 songs off it, you know?
Exactly. That's what everyone says on the contrarian shows and on all the channels I watch.
Mm.
Pardo, Sea Tranquility. In the 90s, albums just got too long.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now with TikTok and everything, everyone has short attention span theater. Yet there are these long albums that are just too much. And
Yeah.
that's why listening to music is just a different experience now than it was back then. Then you could play 2 albums in a little over an hour. And then
Right.
once you get to the late 80s, 90s, everyone's doing an hour, 15 songs. It's too much.
Too
You
much.
always hear guys on shows saying it's a little too long, chop off a few songs. So
Yes,
you're
exactly.
100% correct.
Yeah, so I'd love to do a show. Maybe that'll be some future show where maybe we could do a panel show where we do, okay, pick your top 3 records that would be much better if they chopped 3 or 4 songs off of it, I think that'd be an interesting episode. But um anyway, um Davey, you did an amazing job as always.
Thanks.
Um, thank you so much for coming on. When I'm thinking the Cars, I had to go to Davey because, and I don't think I failed to mention that this is going to be an ongoing series with Davey, that we're doing all the Cars records. So we are
Yep.
both big fans, and we want to do an analysis of every record. We didn't, and plus the fact that it's one of those two that we've had these before where I do a lot of battles, and when I did XTC Skylarking with Todd Evans, he made me laugh because he said we couldn't do a battle because Skylarking will beat everything. and and the debut of the Cars, I mean, not everybody would felt this way, but there might be some people that would say that it would beat everything. But however, I have a lot of love for a lot of Cars music. So as great as this record is, there are some other things. I mean, I think this album in particular, I have such a soft spot for Candio because I bought this when it came out, and it was one of the first records I bought with my own money. So I
Okay.
still have the hype sticker on it. Um, so yeah, so I just love Candio to death, and I feel like sometimes I feel like Candio and the debut are like twin towers. It's like because they're just both so strong. But anyway, that's just my opinion, and I'm getting ahead of myself, so I'm going to stop talking now. I'm going to say, if
And
you're,
our
go
buddy
ahead.
from Ohio, Grant, that's his favorite Cars album.
Is it?
You mentioned Ohio earlier. Yeah, he loves
Yeah,
Candy.
he loves Candio. So there you go. So I do too. So I'm with you, Grant. Um, but anyway, before we get too far into another tangent, I would say that we covered this album very well. We want to know if you stayed with us, we appreciate it. And we want to know, give us your feedback in the comments. Let us know what you think of this record. We think it's one of the best debuts of all time. What's your take on it? Um, and um, and we appreciate you. Always like and subscribe if you like what you see. And we appreciate you, and we'll see you next time on Curless Mania. Thanks.
Take care. Bye bye.